Music sales figures. They're the ultimate measure of an artist's success, right? Well, hold on to your headphones, because today we're about to turn that idea on its head and explore why these best selling lists might be more smoke and mirrors than cold, hard facts.
Oh, wow, that's quite a bold statement. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, you see, these lists of best selling music artists aren't as straightforward as they might seem. We're talking about artists who've supposedly sold 75 million records or more worldwide. But the way these numbers are calculated is, frankly, mind boggling.
Hmm, I always thought it was just a simple count of albums sold. What makes it so complicated?
That's what most people think, but it's far from it. The methodology takes into account not just album sales, but also singles, compilation albums, music videos, and even digital downloads. And here's where it gets really interesting. The list ranks artists based on both their claimed sales figures and independently certified units.
Wait a minute. So there's a difference between what artists claim they've sold and what can be officially proven.
Exactly. Claimed sales are what the artist or their management says they've sold, while independently certified units are sales that have been verified by official bodies like the Recording Industry Association of America, or RIAA. And get this, sometimes the certified units can actually be higher than the claimed figures, especially for newer artists.
That's unexpected. How is that even possible?
Well, it all comes down to streaming. In recent years, particularly after 2016, streaming has become a major factor in these certifications. The RIAA and other certifying bodies now count streaming towards their gold and platinum thresholds for digital single awards.
So you're telling me that an artist could potentially get a platinum certification without selling a single physical album?
Believe it or not, yes! There's even a perfect example of this. Kanye West's album The Life of Pablo achieved platinum certification without selling a single copy. It was only available for streaming.
That's wild. It really shows how much the music industry has changed in the digital age. But how exactly do they calculate these streaming numbers?
So, the RIAA has a specific formula for this. They count 10 track downloads, or 1,500 audio or video streams, as equivalent to one album unit. Theoretically, if a song were streamed 1.5 billion times on YouTube, the single could receive a diamond certification, and the entire album could be certified platinum.
Oh, I see. So this system could potentially inflate the numbers quite a bit, right?
Absolutely. And it's not just streaming that can lead to inflated numbers. The way multi disc albums are counted can also boost an artist's certified units. The RIAA counts each unit within a set as one unit toward certification. So, if an artist releases a triple album, each sale counts as 3 units.
Well, that certainly complicates things. Are there any other quirks we should be aware of?
Oh, you bet. The way featured artists are counted is pretty interesting too. If a song has been recorded by multiple artists, including featured artists, the certifications for that song are added to each artist's total amount of certified units. So if Rihanna is featured on a Drake song that goes platinum, both Rihanna and Drake get credit for those platinum sales.
That seems like it could really boost some artists' numbers. Is there any limit to this?
There is, actually. If a song has 4 or more artists, they don't include those certifications in the individual artist's totals, as they're considered to have played minor roles. But even with this limit, it's clear that navigating this list can be a bit of a minefield.
No kidding. It really makes you wonder how accurate these best-selling lists really are.
You're right about that. And here's another wrinkle. The markets aren't all treated equally either. The tables are ordered based on retail value, with the largest markets at the top and the smallest at the bottom. So an artist who's huge in the US might rank higher than one who's sold more units in smaller markets.
Hmm, that's an interesting point. Are there any other factors that might skew these rankings?
Well, there's one more thing to consider. The tables only include markets where the databases contain certifications representing figures of 100,000 or more. This means that sales in smaller markets might not be reflected in these rankings at all.
When you break it all down like this, it really makes you look at these best-selling lists in a whole new light, doesn't it?
It sure does. And it's a reminder that while these lists can be fun to debate and discuss, they're not the be-all and end-all when it comes to an artist's impact or success. Music is about so much more than just sales figures. It's about the emotional connection, the cultural impact, the way it can define a moment in time.
That's so true. And let's not forget that some of the most influential artists of all time might not even make it onto lists like these.
Exactly. Think about cult favorites or underground artists who may not have massive sales, but have had an enormous impact on other musicians and on the direction of music as a whole. It reminds me of the famous quote, often attributed to Brian Eno about the Velvet Underground's first album, that while it only sold 30,000 copies in its first 5 years, everyone who bought one of those 30,000 copies started a band.
That's a perfect example. It just goes to show that these sales figures, while interesting, are just one small part of the story when it comes to music and its impact on our lives and culture.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the impact on culture, but also on the industry itself. These changes in how we measure success have had a profound effect on how music is created, marketed, and distributed. For instance, the rise of streaming has led to changes in how songs are structured, with many artists now front-loading hooks to capture listeners' attention in the first few seconds.
That's fascinating. Are there any other ways you've noticed the industry changing in response to these new metrics?
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing a shift towards more frequent releases, with artists putting out singles or EPs more often to maintain a constant presence on streaming platforms. There's also been a rise in collaborative tracks, likely influenced by the way featured artists are counted in these certifications. And let's not forget the impact on album structure. With streaming, there's less emphasis on creating a cohesive album experience and more focus on individual tracks that can perform well on playlists.
It sounds like these changes in measurement are really shaping the very nature of the music we listen to.
That's right, and it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's opened up new avenues for artists to reach audiences and achieve success. On the other hand, some argue that it's led to a more formulaic approach to music making, with artists and labels chasing streams rather than focusing on artistic expression.
So, what do you think the future holds for music measurement and these best-selling lists?
Well, if there's one thing we can be sure of, it's that the industry will continue to evolve. We might see new metrics emerge that take into account factors like social media engagement or live performance attendance, or perhaps we'll see a shift back towards valuing artistic merit over pure numbers. It's hard to say for certain, but it's sure to be an interesting ride.
It certainly will be. Do you have any advice for our listeners who are trying to make sense of these best-selling lists?
I think the key is to approach them with a critical eye. Understand that they're just one measure of success, and not necessarily the most important one. Enjoy them for what they are, interesting data points that can spark discussion. But don't let them be the sole factor in determining what music you value or enjoy. Remember, the best music is the music that resonates with you personally, regardless of its commercial success.
That's great advice. And I suppose it's also worth remembering that these lists are constantly evolving, right?
Absolutely. As we've discussed, the methods for measuring and certifying sales are always changing, which means these rankings can shift over time. An artist who's at the top of the list today might be overtaken tomorrow as new data comes in or certification methods change. It's a dynamic, ever-changing landscape.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just that I hope this conversation encourages our listeners to dig deeper into the music they love, regardless of whether it tops the charts or breaks sales records. At the end of the day, music is a deeply personal experience, and its true value lies in how it makes us feel, think, and see the world. So keep listening, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep enjoying the music that speaks to you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for tuning in to Oki Radio, everyone. Until next time, keep those ears open and those minds curious.